We're live, everybody. Hello out there. Welcome tonight. Welcome to the stream. I'm going to let you all go in there. And as we're going, what you see here is what I promised last night. I'm continuing this week with the Women of the X-Men, this being the one and only Mystique, as you can see here penciled out in her shape-shifting, not needing to wear clothes glory, with a scaly version of the X-Men logo directly behind her. There we go. As you can see, her figure there, but then again, there's nowhere to run or nowhere to hide with Mystique. So what we're going to be doing is just going in basically. This is really a testament to figure drawing when doing Mystique in her movie form, which is what most people remember her as than they do any kind of comic book costume she's had. So essentially what we're going to be doing here is showing off my unfettered, unobstructed talents for drawing the female form, and always start with the eyes. Here we've got her lashes. Here and there. There. Now I use the 0.2 pen. So for the bottom eyes, we're going to be going with the 0.1 for the lower eyelids. Right there. And there. Now we're going to use that for the eyes on here, for the iris and the pupil. Bring those up so we've got a bit more symmetry and stability in there. Now let's go up to a 2.5 line for the eyebrows. Thicken those up, thick up top, and then slim on the way down. Right there. Anyone else who was there out there in the chat, come on in. Anyone else joining in on the stream? We got ourselves another night. It's funny how the X-Men winds up being the team that has the most prominent women in the Marvel Universe. The most prominent and popular female characters in the Marvel Universe tend to be, most of them are X-Men characters. I know there's Psylocke and Jubilee. I haven't drawn either of them yet. I don't think I've ever actually drawn Psylocke or Jubilee. Now we've got here her middle line there, 0.2. So that means the bottom lip, a nice 2.5. Give her a little bit of a, let's give her the bow lips. That's 2.5, so the top lip and 0.3 line right there. There we go. I think we got a bit of her eyes there, a little more lidded, a little more mysterious. That's the thing with when Mystique is played well in the film, she's very much an enigma. I preferred her in the earlier movies with Rebecca Romijn playing her. Honestly, I think I've mentioned that before. I liked Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique at first, but then it's like the more popular she got, the more ego full of herself and ego pandering it became with, we've got this major star. We just happened to catch her in this 3-picture deal before she really became who could demand something. Then, so what I wound up doing was and to the point of like X-Men Apocalypse, where like every other character is talking about her like she's some kind of savior. And yes, I know she was popular, but that doesn't mean that you have to go in and treat her like some kind of warrior goddess. I mean, like a warrior goddess that's without, showing it. Like, pretty much because of how little lines Mystique had in the movie, it was almost like her few lines, but with a real strong presence whenever she was there. Mystique was more of a show don't tell kind of presence, versus the more popular Jennifer Lawrence became between First Class and Days of Future Past, the more it became about having to, sort of tell us how great she is, and it came about showing us, like especially with Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse, where they really almost were they that was the part of X-Men Apocalypse I didn't like, was how overly ego pandering they got with her. And then on top of that, you had how they had to keep like talking about her, about how great she is when she's not on screen. The Great Hero asks Nick in the chat, well, that's another strange parallel of how the whole course of really giving Mystique her character arc in First Class is to see how she goes down the path of becoming, the henchwoman for Magneto. But then it's like, then the more popular Jennifer Lawrence became, and then it was like, oh no, I'm not going to be playing a villain. They're going to show. I want to make it about how it's all revolves around me not being evil, not doing something evil. So, not doing the criminal act that winds up leading to the whole mutant dystopian future of Days of Future Past hinges on her, which was clearly a big shot of, okay, we've got her now, and now we have to make her more important. We have to make her the focal point. And that's why she's actually a bigger presence on the poster for Days of Future Past than I think actually, yeah, she was a bigger image on the main poster than Hugh Jackman was, if you look back at the Days of Future Past movie poster. But then you get to X-Men Apocalypse, and there's even moments when you have Cyclops in his high school, and they're talking about her. There's Storm in the middle of this low-rent neighborhood, I think in Egypt it was, and there's a painted like Che Guevara revolutionary poster of Mystique, where she's talking about how I want to be like her. And in the middle of flying out to where Apocalypse is to try and save the world, everybody on the plane has to stop and tell Mystique about how important she is. When I actually prefer the show don't tell kind that Rebecca Romijn played, where she has one line in the first movie, but you really listen to that and it tells you about her character and her motivations. People like you were the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child. Then when we first see her morph into her real self and beats on the senator that's been captured. Or she has more lines in X-Men 2, but there's the time when she's there, the only time she interacts with Nightcrawler, and she asks him, why don't you just try and look normal all the time? And her only response to him is, because we shouldn't have to. And that further gives you insight into, why she's with Magneto and why she would be into the Brotherhood of Mutants, or the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, as they were initially called. Yeah, especially the original Days of Future Past storyline from the X-Men comics, she was part of it, but the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants that she was in charge of at the time weren't really hinging on. She was the leader, but the story wasn't entirely revolving around her. Where, yeah, retconning it and trying to build up to more of, we have this big A-list actress now. It's like we pretty much, and at least in Days of Future Past, there was an act of her, like, really, we see her moving around the world and we really see her acting. I mean, still trying, versus X-Men Apocalypse, where she's in the blue makeup like maybe once, and every scene she has like little to no expression and is like arguing with everybody that doesn't instantly agree with her and fawn over her. So in the chat, we've got Nick Markins and we've got Mildred. Of course, this being another excuse for her to bring up box wine. And we have Vicky. I've returned. Hello, all. Hope everyone is doing well tonight, says Nick in the chat. Yes, I hope everyone out there is doing well as well. Now, see here, we've got most of the basic contours of our figure done. I'm using my basic lines. My most basic line being that I'm using is the 3.5, 0.35 Copic multiliner, which is the line I used for the exposed areas of Storm's costume, and I was drawing her last night. Let's see, as everyone else comes in, let's see if Onstract 04 also comes around. Let's see, everyone else here also comes around. It's nice to see and Vicky out there, I've got a surprise for you at the end of the stream. A little something to show off. But one thing at a time. Let's first get to trying to articulate her hands properly. Okay, I'll check to see if Vicky has the pillow. Got more people coming into the chat. Those that are returning, thank you for returning. Those that are new, welcome. Stick around and subscribe while you're there. This is a weeknightly ritual for me. Well, not specifically drawing Mystique right here in her movie form, but yes, drawing the comic book and pop culture characters is something I'm here for on a weeknightly basis. And okay, so we've got Vicky counting Vicky's counting her pillows, and Mildred is opening up her boxed wine. Okay, there we go. There. Now I'm leaving the fingers open because we are going to be doing fingernail details in there, in these slats here. Now, a little bit of detail there, a little bit of overlapping lines, so these fingers have some depth. But we still want to make them, very thin, very willowy, very feminine. That's the secret to feminine hands, at least as I see them. Very elegant, very long, very fluid, very elegant. That's sort of the comic book women. You have to do that kind of figure. Now here, we've got 3 of the 4 main fingers there visible. Be honest, I don't know how many actual pillows I have, says Vicky in the chat. Okay, let's get up here so we can make her body centered. And honestly, the reference I used for this, for doing Mystique in her movie form, was Rebecca Romaine, not really Jennifer Lawrence, to be honest. Because I knew who Rebecca Romaine was because the summer before the first X-Men, she played herself for like a scene in the second Austin Powers. And I had seen, of course, my father always got the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, and I saw her on the cover. I knew who she was. And I was like, oh, so that's why she's not talking that much. But there was something about the blue body paint and her like very intense expression and all the trailers and all the toys that scared me, but like drew me to her as a character. Especially the scene where she's in Wolverine's shape and she's disguised as him. So it's a Wolverine versus Wolverine fight. Now, okay, where else are we going to go? Let's start with her hair. But let's go down to the 0.3. So now that we're finally onto Mystique in the chat, the questions for anyone new in the chat there, once you subscribe, I have 2 questions for anyone new in the chat there and everyone else in the chat there also. If you haven't already answered, who's your favorite X-Men female character? And 2, which version of Mystique right here do you prefer? Do you prefer the Rebecca Romaine Mystique or Jennifer Lawrence from the more recent movies? It's I've already mentioned before, but at the beginning of the stream, that was when people were still coming in. So for those that have come in, I'll repeat. I prefer the one Miss Rebecca Romaine, who now I see is on Star Trek Beyond. And that's, well, then again, remember the breakout character of Star Trek Voyager was 7 of 9, who was there obviously for eye candy, but they wound up actually making a worthwhile character out of her. Yeah, 7 of 9, sort of like I feel about Mystique, the way that the people who like 7 of 9 from Star Trek Voyager feel. that she's the right combination of eye candy and a character who's, actually there as a character. Like, we see her in the second X-Men movie do more like efficient spy work and more effective spy work than I've really seen out of Black Widow in most of the Marvel movies. Where you have, yes, I know she walks around naked like this, but yes, it's eye candy, but there actually is like a real functional reason why she wouldn't be dressed when walking around in her default form. Just practical purposes when she's taking shape. But the fact that when we do see her, going undercover, she actually does take forms that, don't draw attention to herself. Unlike Iron Man 2, when we're introduced to Black Widow trying to be a secretary and her portfolio is lingerie. Remember that? A bunch of like Victoria's Secret photos. And of course, doing like elaborate kung fu tricks on Iron Man's driver. Yeah. Okay, Nick in the chat says he prefers Jennifer Lawrence, which even though he likes Mystique in all the movies, but well, yeah, they did give, for better or worse, they did give Jennifer Lawrence more storyline, more lines. And Mildred wonders why Nick is preferring Jennifer Lawrence over Miss Rebecca Romaine. This is yes, she was one of the prominent swimsuit models of the late '90s, and she married the fat boy from Stand By Me. Which look at a picture of look at Romaine as she was as Mystique, or look at anything else she did in her modeling career, and then look at what the kid from Stand By Me, the fat one, looked like, and think that guy's going to grow up to marry her. There's hope for us all out there that are, the kid that got made fun of for being fat, or if you're the kid that got made fun of for your weight as a boy, then you can grow up, become a good-looking actor who winds up marrying a swimsuit model who's also a Marvel character. I prefer the X-Men prequels to the first two, says Nick. Okay, yeah, First Class I did like as a movie, and the first one and the beginning of the whole arc of seeing how she becomes the villain, the henchwoman of Magneto that we would see in the older movies, that was great. It's just I didn't like the veering away from that, because Jennifer Lawrence becoming a big star meant that they have to treat her like revolutionary. I joked before about Apocalypse. The thing I didn't like was how she's phoning in her performance the whole time, but every time she's not around, or when she is around, they have to treat her like she's the most important thing in the universe. Like she's, Joan of Arc and Gloria Steinem and Ronda Rousey mixed together. Okay, now we're going to go and use the 0.1 pen for her nails. And especially with, and yeah, she did shapeshift and, wear clothes in the X-Men comics, but that was more of a thing with the Comics Code Authority. Probably wouldn't have let them get away with having a female character who's naked all the time, essentially. But she also was as ruthless there in those comics as we see her in the movies, just that she talks more. But I prefer the, show don't tell. And even Lindsay Ellis, that one YouTuber film critic, when talking about the Mystique character in one of her videos, even said that I don't think Romaine gets the credit she deserves as a physical performer, and how she's able to convey a character with little to no dialogue and walking around in, blue paint and latex. And how this, that kind of body paint was something so delicate that she couldn't even use skin cream, drink wine, or fly on a plane 24 hours before having to go in makeup, because all of those things would affect her skin chemistry in a way that would make the paint rub off and the latex fall off as well. Now start doing her scales. Yes, we do find out that in the X-Men comics, Mystique is Nightcrawler's mother, hence, the similar skin. Because I think they have something from the comics they do transfer into the prequels, is that a side effect of her shapeshifting powers is that it's decelerated her aging, so that she'll still look like a teenager even when she's 40, which was that's probably a convenient little thing they added in so that they could explain the decades apart that those prequel movies are supposed to be, even though she looks in the face the same, the face and the body only a few years difference. It's we got the scales here, but we've got all the scales up around this area that I know are all going to be fun. But let's move down to there. Vicky says, what you liked about her character, that she was ruthless. What I was just saying before, how she was, really the show don't tell kind of, does the job of being the henchwoman to Magneto, the most effective of anybody else in his brotherhood. Or is that something else? And of course, Nick's asking Mildred about the boxed wine. Got to be careful with these lines here. Now, there we go. There's her feet. Now the one last little boring bit, unless you're... Oh, that she was Nightcrawler's mother. Vicky answered the question, what she liked about her character was that she was Nightcrawler's mother, and that her personality was good too, which... yes. But she also, yes, she has a good personality. That's something... I think the men I may think the men out there in the audience would get the joke about, oh, but she also has a personality. Well, there probably is somebody, or maybe I could do another one of Mystique where she's like this, but she has a shirt on that says all of this and brains too. Those were shirts that were popular in the 80s. I think it was more popular with men than it was with really women wearing them. But there would be like a joke of a woman that looked like a swimsuit model or a playmate or a movie star would walk like that, but the shirt, it would be looking as she is, but then the shirt would say all of this and brains too. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to go back up to the fun parts. Nightcrawler's father was an X-Men First Class, but I guess they didn't want to link he and Mystique before introducing Nightcrawler. Yeah, I think the thing with the difference between First Class and Days of Future Past, that all of those mutants that were introduced in First Class, except for the one Havoc, were all killed in between movies, so that the only X-Men characters you'd see throughout them were the ones from the first 3. It's like the only X-Men in the film series was Bryan Singer's X-Men, which is the service to all the effort that went into making X-Men First Class work. Because if you look up on that production, that was a production that had a lot of bad things going for it, of production delays, and how it was originally supposed to be a Magneto origin movie. And then on top of that, there was like a whole massive, heavily laid out action scene with revolving rooms in a dream that got cut in the middle of pre-production because Inception came out. And then with the rewrites and the changes to the script, Alice Eve backed out of playing Emma Frost. If there were ever an actress who was perfectly cast to play Emma Frost, it was her, if only for her appearance. But then again, remember, in First Class, most of Emma Frost was her appearance. She didn't really have as much time to shine in her snooty villainess kind of character. But then on top of that, you had all these things, and then the whole mark of, oh, this is just desperation. They're doing this because they want to keep the movie rights. But then the actual finished film was really pulled off really well. And funny how the director of First Class was the one who was supposed to have directed X-Men 3, the one where the big deal of how they give Mystique the mutant cure so that she loses her shape-shifting powers, but then Magneto just abandons her right there. And it's funny how but then there was an argument about how the producer didn't want to give the director as much pre-production time as he wanted, so he wound up backing out of directing X-Men 3, and they brought in Brett Ratner, and that's what led to The Last Stand being considered the Batman and Robin of the franchise. Which I don't think it's terrible, but yeah, this it is like a mediocre letdown for what was supposed to be the big conclusion to the initial arc of the X-Men series. I mean, the whole big war of mutant and humankind that had been building up, and then that kind of delivery. Especially with there's scenes in the first X-Men that are much more stripped down with special effects, but those scenes actually got my blood pumping, got my attention up more than the massive CGI extravaganzas with the Golden Gate Bridge being ripped off its hinges and tossed around like that, like you saw it in the movie. The Wolverine versus Mystique as Wolverine fight. I mean, that one alone got me. Oh yes, Nick just said in the chat, "You're not one of us anymore, my dear," which proved that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, because they left her there, but they left her there to be captured and then give away all of the secrets about what the Brotherhood was going to do and where Magneto was hiding out. So, haha, the joke was on them. Why would you want to get rid of your most competent lieutenant? The one who did all of the major spy work to be able to get you out of prison and to be able to capture Professor X and do the... And then there was the brainwashing Cyclops bit and everything else that happened. Everything else that happened that broke Magneto's way in X2. That was definitely a not smart move for the Master of the Magnet, as he calls himself in the old X-Men video game. Since this figure is very simple and slight, so we're going to be doing a lot more detailing of her scales and really making these as intricate as possible. That's why the X behind her is actually done with scales as well, to really get the visual theme going. Sort of like those X-Men theme covers that the great pin-up comic book artist J. Scott Campbell did, I think over the summer, where he had it was him drawing, and he was drawing multiple characters of course, female X-Men characters, and all of them were the figure posed the way he poses them, very sexy, but with some kind of X design behind them that fits the theme, like a version of Emma Frost where it's ice, or a version of Mystique where it looks like scales moving, because the effect with her shape-shifting is like scales expanding and twisting around her. The scene in First Class where they're in the office with, I think it's the CIA, and they're saying, oh, all this stuff that's got to be, oh, there's mutant powers, oh, they can't be true, they can't be, these are lies, get out of here. And then Mystique just gets up and shapeshifts into the form of one of the guys that's there in the room, and then changes back into her blue skin for a bit, and then back into the blonde hair, blue-eyed girl for most of the film. The big mutant and proud recurring line from First Class, where we only ever see her not in the blue makeup outside of only ever when she's alone with Professor X. That X-Men game is great. I played it last week on my PlayStation 3. You mean the 90s X-Men arcade game I was talking about? I know that's been there's like an emulation of that on the PlayStation Store, where you fight them at the end. I am Magneto, Master of the Magnet. That's his he introduces himself. Villains like him are always very theatrical and courteous right before they destroy you, because mutant kind must prevail. There we go with no slime, but there are scales. The song from Labyrinth, Magic Dance, slime and scales. No, just scales. Yeah, the arcade. Oh, yeah. So Nick was confirming the 90s X-Men arcade game. It's now available on PlayStation 3. That's that's actually when arcades were still easy access, easy to find. So I would regularly go to one that had actually that, and it also had, I think it was Avengers versus X-Men, but I don't know specifically. I do remember specifically about the other game was that the final guy you would fight was Apocalypse, and now he would, become 100 feet tall, and he'd charge at you with a big drill hand, or the hand that was like a big clamp. And I actually knew Apocalypse more from that game than I knew him from the comics or the X-Men cartoon. But he would still be there to destroy you. Ha 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 ha. I was the world's first mutant. Yes, but Mystique just may be the world's sexiest mutant, so your days are numbered, Apocalypse. Or I could have, I think that would have been a copyright problem. It did cross my mind I could have illustrated Mystique, but doing it recreating one of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue covers that Rebecca Romaine did back in the late 90s or early 2000s. But then I thought about that might be too the audience that there might not get it, or there might be like a copyright thing where I'd post it and then there'd be a infringement. So I just decided to go with drawing her as we see her in the movies, which I'm pretty sure, I don't know if anybody even really knows the standard comic book outfit she has. I don't think so, unless you're the general public. If they know the character, they would know her from as she looked in the movies. Oh yeah, she's in the blue makeup, naked. Like anybody there in the chat, do you know what Mystique's comic book outfit looks like? And news is breaking today that Apocalypse will be featured in future X-Men films. Okay. It's the kind of double standard that Marvel Studios gets from those unprofessional fanboy sites and bloggers like that. They probably could play Apocalypse the exact same way as he was played and looked in X-Men Apocalypse by Oscar Isaacs, but they'll suddenly call it, absolutely brilliant. Like you could take a box of Twinkies that has the X-Men on them, and there'll be people, those blogger types will be making vicious insults, but then you can show the exact same box, but put the Marvel Studios logo on it, and they'll be applauding it. Very cool, very cool. I'm talking about those kind of guys who everything they say about the Star Wars franchise or any other Disney-owned property, they might as well be reading off a cue card that's labeled Disney. Hey, remember who's paying the bills around here? I mean, remember what studio we're just big fans of, and that our opinions are our own. Very cool. Yeah, if you ever watch the Red Letter Media parody videos, they do the Nerd Crew, where they make fun of those kind of podcasts and bloggers like that. And Nick agrees with me about the double standard of the fanboys, and Vicky says she wishes she had Mystique's physique. Well, her name came from a book that came out in the 70s that was one of the major texts of the women's lib movement that started in the 70s, The Feminine Mystique. In this case, we could say this is the feminine physique. Or the mystique of the feminine physique, or Mystique's feminine physique. Maybe I'll change the name of the stream to that, Mystique's feminine physique, after this is done processing. Or maybe in the description. Just change the description below. What do you think? The options, which is the better caption? The physique of Mystique, the feminine physique, or the feminine physique of Mystique? And Mildred said that Mystique is built like her 20 years ago. Well, I haven't really seen a picture of you, so I'm just going to have to take your word for that. The only ones here in the chat that I know who they look like are those that I know from convention appearances I've made, like Vicky, who we first came across each other at the Monroe Pop Fest. That's how she's become a regular here in my streams. Trying to do the patterns here in a way that fits along. Let's go back up. And no, I'm not doing this just for the attention. I'm going up here because I really do want to properly detail the arc of the scales across her body. Okay, there we go. Do a little bit of around here. Remember, keep them. The size of the scales in her body are of all different shapes and of different arcs. So here we're kind of doing it almost like it's almost snake-like, actually. She's a borderline reptilian. In the way the textures on her body look. And one detail I am aspiring to master is the variation of textures on figures. Well, figures like this, or if I were going to draw something like, a snake or any other creature that was scaled. And Mystique right here definitely counts as one of them. There we go. And now here, let's do one that's kind of an arc around her beautiful midriff right here, her sleek, toned swimsuit model midriff here. In the tradition of Vampirella. This is actually a creative way of being able to delineate her toned stomach without having to go in and do real line work. I also saw an interesting pattern someone did where they took the big promo poster of Jennifer Lawrence by herself from Days of Future Past, but they did it as a silhouette with just her scales visible on her body. And that actually was good reference for trying to pencil in the different way that this texture of scales would work on her body. Move down a bit. No, the men out there, I'm not doing this to make you drool. I'm just drawing this area here to make this accurate as to how her scales look in the movie makeup design. I remember the HBO First Look special on the making of the first X-Men, and they actually showed, of course, carefully placed shots of in the makeup room of how long it took and the process of applying all of this to her body. I wonder if you could draw Blaschko's lines. I wonder if you could draw Blaschko's lines. They are markings normally not visible on humans, but cool looking. Blaschko's lines, I honestly do not know what those are, but I am willing to look them up and learn what they are for the sake of seeing whether or not I could. Let's go. Let's do a little bit of the inside of her thigh here. We're going to make these scales lighter, and we're going to have more of an arc on the contour, the exterior contour of her right leg here. Lines drawn by Blaschko. Well, then I'm going to have to look up Blaschko. Now I am honestly curious. Thank you, Vicky, for introducing me to someone or something I'd never heard of. I'm definitely going to have to go and track down what exactly that is. Now I think of it as a challenge. Something I haven't drawn before. Let's see if I can climb that Everest. So since you're an artist, do you feel you can draw anything you can see? Asks Nick in the chat. Honestly, I think I can really. That's the real challenge of anyone working professionally, is the ability, even in comics, the ability to draw anything you can see. So the ability to draw anything I can see, that is something I would do. That is something I would want to challenge myself for. But it's, the matter of Is there anything you feel you cannot draw? Well, it's a matter of really setting my mind and my hand to it to see, like, if anything, there's like, a coffee mug or a toaster or, you know, a squirrel or a bird. Blashko's lines are real markings. Markings, you mean like carving into a tree? Or like is that some kind of tattooing process that I've never heard of? Going here with starting with the other arc. Now let's go and do the contouring arc here. Just don't want my hand to cast any more shadows than is needed to be. So I'm gonna now steer these scales in the opposite direction. Curving up and around her kneecap there. And I've meant to do a contour line around here to delineate her kneecap a bit more. Honestly did like this. One of the first things when I really did try to seriously draw professionally was the big frustration I had. The big thing I beat myself up over was I never thought I'd be able to draw attractive women. And because I knew, looking at just anybody who's a name in comics as an artist, it's one of the standard things they have to be good at is they have to draw an attractive female figure. And I'd look at what I would do and I would just like double over and cry. Or, oh God, I'll never be able to get around to that. And like if I tried to show it to anybody, if I tried to show it to like a girl to get them interested in me, and they'd like look at that and cringe at how awful I'd rendered their gender. And then I would just go into the corner and hate myself for failing at that. And Blashko's lines are lines of normal cell development in the skin. These lines are invisible under normal conditions. They become apparent when some diseases of the skin manifest. And that's from the Google definition, according to Vicky. Blashko's lines, yes. Now that I know what they are, those kind of lines, yes, I've drawn those before on certain characters if they're visible, like certain like vampire kind of characters. If you wanted to make their skin tone look more sickly or more pale, then you could render those kind of lines under them, under the surface of their skin. Now here, curving these ones around. Her body up there. Okay, Mildred, it's not like she even said that she was copying off the Google definition, so it's not like other people who, I know those kind of people who read something off WebMD, and then when they go to the hospital, they repeat what they've read as if, they're the person who is the MD or the PhD when they're not. Like the House, on that show House, that doctor, the title character would make fun of his patients when they would talk like that. Which, understandably so, the 6 to 7 years of medical training it takes. I am giving Vicky credit for knowing that she's reading off the Google definition, unlike other people who clearly are reading this medical fact from, some online journal, but they don't admit to it out loud, but then still try to act like they're the expert. Which is, the kind of people that led to the whole crisis of parents not wanting to vaccinate children over the misinformation that it caused autism from a crackpot paper from somebody who lost their medical license for trying to for reporting that. And apparently Mildred is smarter than the average bear. And another thing to do with rendering Mystique's scales is to make sure that they have a particular kind of shape that doesn't come off looking like leopard print. Like she's got a bunch of leopard spots on her. We don't want that to happen. I definitely don't want that to happen. Because you never know when it comes to, especially a person who sees Mystique but doesn't know who the character is, but they see these and like, oh, is she like some kind of leopard woman? Vicky's passing out gummy bears in the chat now, which is a cause for celebration. And Mildred is also stealing picnic baskets, and Vicky is handing out gummy bears. Everybody's having a good time in the chat. This is the longest we've gone without referencing boxed wine, which is usually when Mildred and Nick are in the chat, it's Mildred starts goading people into chat about boxed wine. So now I've got that thought, as I was mentioning earlier in the back of my head, about I could have rendered this of doing a swimsuit issue style cover of Mystique and her body paint, like either Rebecca Romaine did back in the 90s, or like one of those swimsuit issue covers where they have the cover models in body paint, which is the body paint thing they've done has grown more and more prominent the more years it's passed. I think the first time they did it was with Heidi Klum, and it just became something they tried as a experiment to then becoming one of the regular selling points of the issue. Let's go move down here. Let's slope this down, slope these stripes down this way and that into a nice little arc around her figure that curves in and around her ankle. These get smaller and smaller to a point where they're just little strokes like that. Here they're going to be, since we're seeing more of the inside of her leg here, it's going to radiate outwards more away from her ankle than other ones, than her left leg. Got to remember that. Going up there. Let's go now a little more. There we are here. Now down there. Curve this one around the contour of her calf. Her calf, not calf. She's a grown mutant woman of exceptional beauty, not a baby cow. So we're talking about her calves, not a calf. I have to remember to enunciate that more carefully. Now we're going to move back up. And the moment the men and all the audience have been waiting for is now going to begin. Sloping that line. Now moving it downward in the other direction. Now down this way too. Moving my arm down in a long-winded line like this. The men out there, I know they're not as large as the other X-Men women I've been drawing lately, but hey, that's the name of the game with her. I mean, in either comic book form or in the movie form, she's not drawn or portrayed by an actress who's, she's longer and much more sleek figure. She's not Miss Double D. There's the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader kind of body. No, I did not lose the cow toy treasure. I have it. I still have it. It's just not my little Millie the cow, I was calling it. I just have it placed off camera. I still have it. Do not worry, Vicky. Do not worry anybody else in the audience about my little mascot, Millie the cow, little cow figurine I had, which I didn't even buy it. I found it. It was on the counter at the bakery that is walking distance from my home. The cow toy eraser? No, it wasn't an eraser. I don't think it's an eraser. I just think it's this little mini cow figurine. I haven't tried to use it as an eraser, so I wouldn't know. No, Mildred, I did not call you a cow. And you're saying I called you a cow when you're just shouted out Boobzilla in the chat. Why would you shout that out? When I just explained myself that I just explained to everyone out there that no, Mystique right here is not a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader from the 70s with her figure. It's like I was saying about, she's played by a swimsuit model and then by an actress who's not super curvy, but definitely by standards of other actresses out there. That's why I remember reading I saw a review of Red Sparrow that Jennifer Lawrence starred in I think the New Yorker, and the critic actually brought up, actually called her voluptuous, which is something I wouldn't say is really her figure. But by the standards of, Hollywood women and how actresses seem to get visibly skinnier in an unhealthy way as their career goes along and as they age, I think it's by attrition of comparing her to other actresses that, yes, Jennifer Lawrence is considered voluptuous. And the whole reason that critic brought that up was the question of whether or not the voluptuous Lawrence has miscast in attempting to play a ballerina. Ballerinas who are notoriously malnourished and have to be, very physically elegant, yet also very visibly waif-like. Hence why I just look at a picture of Natalie Portman and yeah, I'm casting her as the lead in a movie like Black Swan made sense. But how it's the exact opposite of that with her being the female Thor. When you could put a blonde wig on Gina Carano, or there's plenty of other like martial arts women that have gone into acting that could do that. And yes, Vicky just brought up that, yes, Vicky and I did name the cow Millie many streams ago. I think I first found the cow back in I think it was October, and had a little guest in the chat, a little guessing game of who wanted to name the cow, and she came up with Millie, so we went with that. And I usually have it off screen, but I'll definitely be bringing that back soon. And there is a little surprise display on behalf of Vicky at the end of the stream that I will be showing everyone once we get these scales in here. There. And there. Just scales in the shape of the big X. Right there and there. We're moving upward and onwards. We're starting at the top of the X, then we're going to radiate our way down, following the pencils as closely as accurately as my hand will dictate. Going in there and in there, using the same line weight that was used for her figure. Now down here and up there. Down there. Moving across as quickly. Moving with swiftness. Right there. Don't have to make them even. Actually, scales like this shouldn't be even. And particularly with Mystique's figure, where, yes, there are arcs to these scales on her body, but they're not of even size. If you look at them, they seem to actually kind of get big or small, almost in a way that does confuse them with the leopard spots. And the way that, leopard spots on their figures aren't all the same. They vary in size and shape as well. Right there, right there, right there. Now we're getting into the home stretch with... Remember to sway that hip. That's what makes Mystique truly deadly, is the ruthless determination, along with being able to use that beautiful figure against anybody that's in her way. The way she's able to basically slide down surfaces, like the second X-Men movie, she's able to karate chop her way through several guards, slip under a door, flips them off as the door shuts behind her. That shot that was in the second movie that they had to do, they always showed an alternate take of it, because at the end, the ending bit of the shot where she's giving them the finger, something that they couldn't show in the trailers, so they had to use one of just her sliding away from the camera. There. Now just a bit more. Not that many more. A bit more to get that line in place. Just a few down here. We're in the home stretch now, ladies and gentlemen. Just as we're getting to the top of the hour, this is all ending perfectly for me. Just a few bits of pencil stuff I will be erasing later on. The final touch. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a finished piece of Mystique. Tell me what you all think in the comments below. Nick right there says that her scales remind him of Cheetah from Wonder Woman, which is what I was saying about how scales and leopard spots can look similar. Besides that, thank you all for watching. Those returning viewers, thank you there. If you're don't forget to like and share. If you're a returning viewer, please subscribe and like and share. And both returning and new viewers, besides subscribing, liking, and sharing, can also help out the channel by shopping or donating in my online art store, which is the first link in the description below. 11x17 pen and ink illustrations like this are for sale in 4 categories of Marvel and DC and anime and pop culture characters. I also have color drawings that are 11 by 14. They're $20 for sale in the store. Pen and ink illustrations are $25 for sale. I have commissions of illustrations of this size for $50, or for $25, you can commission me for a color drawing like this one I just did of Gamora of Guardians of the Galaxy for Vicky T right there in the chat. Thank you. And first thing in the afternoon, this will be sent off over to your home right there. This will be in the mail. It'll be there by regular mail within 2 days. So when you see your postman in a couple of days, be expecting this in a nice little envelope for you. And besides that, what I mean by donating is that the last item in my store, if you want to help the channel and help me out, but don't have, besides buying my artwork, you can either send me in increments of $5, $10, $25, or a custom dollar amount to donate to keep my to fund the channel, to keep the business up. Or you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. Those are both linked in the description below as well. And also, you can help out the channel with a purchase from my Amazon wish list, which includes equipment to expand and develop the production of my channel, as well as new instruction and reference material for me to develop myself artistically and to further develop on a comic project of mine, which is titled Pain Machines. And tomorrow night, I will be live again, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, where I will be drawing Rogue of the X-Men, the super-powered, power-draining home Southern Belle of the X-Men franchise as played by Anna Paquin. So I will see you all tomorrow night. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. Shop in my store or donate to my store if you can. Commission me if you can. Vicky, that Gamora commission will be there tomorrow, will be sent off in the mail tomorrow morning. And until then, see you, Space Cowboy.